Panthers fans, rejoice because we freaking made it, man. Holy shit. So at least one of the teams made it to the playoffs, and the other one, real quick before I talk about the Panthers, Miami Heat, such a disappointing game. We could not score against the Atlanta Hawks. They have dominated us defensively, and we have one more chance against the winner of Toronto and Chicago. Other than that, that's it. Now we have to try making it as the 8th seed. So that didn't happen. But one team made it to the playoffs. Florida freaking Panthers. Let's go, Cats. It was not easy. It was stressful. It was actually a lot of stressful things that's happened. So, let me just talk about the season real quick, and then we'll talk about how we had to make the playoffs. Way before the All-Star season, All-Star break. If you saw the vlogs, I was there for the All-Star game. It was awesome. We were pretty inconsistent. This team was very inconsistent with the record. The highest win streak we could ever come up with was 2-game win streaks each freaking time. We couldn't even go up to the third. We couldn't go up to the 3-game win streak until after the All-Star break. But before the All-Star break happened, it was a lot of frustration. So much frustrations. It's almost like the team was still new, still trying to get hang of things, especially with the Matthew Tkachuk trade with Jonathan Huberdeau. At that time, we were still stunned, sting about that trade. We were thinking like Florida Panthers got fleeced, the Flames got fleeced. Who won the trade? After this run we had, we know who won this trade. Early speaking, but regardless of all that, it was a pretty frustrating season until after the All-Star break. We were losing games that we should have won, and we were winning games that we should be losing. And that's where the frustration lies. If we can beat the teams that are good, why couldn't we beat the teams that are bad? Example number 1, Arizona Coyotes on the road. Example number 2, the Columbus Blue Jackets. How do we blow it against the Blue Jackets? Example number 3. Example number 3 is, how the hell could we not finish off against St. Louis? And there are a couple other examples, but those are the most painful losses of the season, especially if we had a chance in overtime. And I'll give you an example of the teams that we could have lost, but we won anyway. New Jersey Devils, and I was there for that game at Prudential Center. They were a hot team at that time, and yet we still beat them, and I was there to witness it. And I were giving examples with the teams that we should have won but lost with those teams that I just mentioned. That's majority of it was all before the All-Star break. After the All-Star break, we got hot. We had good stretches. We weren't on a good winning streak yet. And I'll talk about that in a minute. We started off after the All-Star break against the Lightning. And we were thinking we're going to freaking blow it. Because we barely escaped Boston before the All-Star break. And then we got the Eastern Conference champion. We destroyed them 7-1. At the same night, too, the Hurricanes were abolishing Duke. So we beat the Lightning, and then we were thinking, after that 2-game win streak, after all the competitions, That's it, right? We were going to go back and lose yet another game and start another win streak, right? Until we realized we were playing against the Sharks, who are not a good team. They were saying, like, we're not a rebuilding team, but let's be real, they are technically a rebuilding team. We beat them 4-1. First time this season, we have made a 3-game win streak, and it was huge. But then things start to go back downhill, and we had chances to keep the streak going, and then our streak comes back. It's a roller coaster, inconsistency, frustration season. You pretty much get the gist of it. We were thinking things are turning up, but then we go back down. Keep in mind, we could not keep the win streak going. We could barely make 4. We should have had 4, and we lost to the Jets. That was another one that we should have won. That was painful. Because we could have had a long stretch of win streak, and we couldn't do it. Flyers is another example. But things changed after that 3-game win streak that turned to a 4-game losing streak until we ran into Toronto up in Toronto, Canada. You see, Paul Maurice was heavily criticized by Florida Panthers fans, and granted, I was too. I'm not going to deny that I was not part of the conversation, because I was certainly one of those people who said, Paul Maurice needs to go. I'm calling for his firing. I hate him. He ruined this franchise after 1 year. He has to go. Right? Well, in that bench, he was having sort of a meltdown. He had a little bit of a meltdown with his team, and the team woke up. They have woke up, and they won against the Maple Leafs in overtime. And then what could have been and did started this long stretch. We had a 3-game winning streak, and then we ran into Buffalo, and we won again. Our first 4-game win streak of the season. Pretty important, because in that time frame, we were actually outside the playoff spot. And then with this win streak, we're in the playoff spot. You see why it's so important? Every game is important. We had Toronto, we had Montreal. Montreal was an easy one. So that was pretty good, 5-2. We had the Blue Jackets, ran them over. Buffalo was tough, but then we beat them to start this 4-game win streak. Then we had Ottawa. That game was unbelievable. It was physical. People were fighting. We had each other's backs. And at the end of it all, we won the game. 5-game win streak. And the big one, Capitals. And then we had one more chance to do it. Actually, no, that was not our last chance at all. With this game, we could have sealed it then to make this playoff spot, but we just barely missed it by losing in overtime against Toronto. Until tonight. Now, before I talk about tonight, there's one key part. Actually, no, there's like 4 key parts of this win streak going. There was Barkov, Tkachuk, Montour. Those were key players. Honorable mentions are Carver Hagee and one more player. See, Bobrovsky had an illness, so somebody has to step up, because Spencer Knight had to enter this mental health, whatever it's called. But he needed to be there because he was dealing with a lot. So we had to bring in Alex Lyon to help us with a stretch. My God, Alex Lyon stepped up big time. He was making critical saves, and critical saves. There were shots that should have went in, but Lyon, he's the freaking Lion King. He, right there, that goalie, saved our season. He saved our asses. He saved our asses. And just when we thought it was not enough, we had help. Remember, we had a tiebreaker against Pittsburgh. We had a tiebreaker against New York, Islanders to be specific. We actually had a tiebreaker against Buffalo. So, here's what was going to pan out. We had the first wild card spot, and we needed to at least make the playoffs to seal it. Like, we're not going to get eliminated at all. We needed a few things. One, we had to win out, or we could have help by other teams. It seemed impossible because Pittsburgh Penguins had the easiest schedule compared to Florida, because Florida had a tough schedule. Even after the Ottawa game, the rest of the schedule was tough. We had the Capitals, we had Toronto, and we had Carolina. Carolina is going to be a scary game, but now there's not much to even worry. But what we want is to stay in that first card spot. But even if we lose that one, it doesn't matter because we're in. But my point here is we had to somehow make the playoffs, and tonight it happened. Remember this, we had a tiebreaker from Pittsburgh, Buffalo, and New York. Islanders to be specific. So we needed them to lose. Islanders lost last night against Washington. That was our chance to clinch the playoff spot, and we did not do so. So my Florida fans were thinking, that's it. We're not going to make it. They have the easy schedule. And then, as I'm watching the Heat playoff game, which was disappointing, like I said earlier, and I was watching the Marlins hit this cycle, which I already uploaded it just now on this time of the recording. I was watching one more game. I was watching Chicago versus Pittsburgh Penguins. I was watching that game solely because Devils, they already had it going against Buffalo. I'll be right back. I apologize. My cat was being very bad. She knocked over my very important items such as microphones and the webcam. So she was being very bad. So yeah, I had to kick her out. But anyway, back to the video. I was watching Pittsburgh versus Chicago game as I was watching the other two games that are crucial. Well, Marlins wasn't that crucial till the history happened, which I just explained it in my last video. Go watch it. And then I'm like, we need Chicago to win because Buffalo's going to lose. So we need Pittsburgh to lose in regulation to guarantee us a playoff spot. Chicago, somehow, some way, they won against Pittsburgh 5-2. We were very comfortable when they were leading 3-1. When they tied 1-1 Pittsburgh, I thought it was hopeless. We can't do it. They couldn't do it because the team is bad. But they were good enough to beat Pittsburgh, who needs to win that game to capitalize on the New York and Florida overtime loss. They could not get the job done. You see, Pittsburgh could not get the job done, and now, right now, as this time of recording, they are in big trouble because New York, let's be specific, has a game tomorrow. One more game against Canadians. If they win that one, they're in. So what Pittsburgh needs now is the New York loss or overtime loss because I think I'm actually not sure because I don't pay attention to the Islanders or Pittsburgh, but I think Pittsburgh has a tiebreaker. I could be wrong. You can correct me if I'm wrong because I don't root for those teams at all. But if I'm wrong, here's what they need. New York has to lose that game in order for Pittsburgh to have one last chance because if New York wins, that's it. Pittsburgh's eliminated after 14 or 15 years of consecutively making the playoffs. So they're in trouble. But for us, when they lost that game against Chicago, guess what? Because of the tiebreaker, we don't need to worry anymore because we have clinched. We clinched the Stanley Cup playoffs for the fourth straight season. Fourth straight season. At this time now, we have a game against Carolina, and it may stop. It may not end there, but if we go to seconds, we got Boston. So let's see what happens. But Cats fans, my point here: we made the Stanley Cup playoffs. Rejoice at the frustrations after everything that we've been through this season. It was a long season, but at the end of it, we got hot at the right time, and we made the playoffs as our result. I felt as though as we didn't deserve the playoffs, but they made the playoffs anyway. We were good enough to make the playoffs. Now there's one more team that needs to make the playoffs, and that's the Miami Heat. So let's see what happens this week. But for the Cats fans, let's jump in midair in excitement, and let's go to bed happy. We can rest easy. So yeah, that's going to do it for this video, folks. If you have liked this video, hit that like button, subscribe, more content, because Miami TVG has it back. And when he does, he'll be right there with you for your entertainment you deserve. Miami TVG signing out, folks. Good night, everybody.